The world does not usually whisper before it undergoes a massive transformation. It gives signals. These signals are subtle at first, easy to ignore, and buried under the noise of mainstream entertainment. Then suddenly, everything moves at once. Tonight, as you sit here listening, the global financial chessboard is shifting in ways that happen only once in a century. Most people have no idea what this means for their future, their savings, and their freedom. Think about the silence of a Sunday night. While the majority of the population is feeling the anxiety of Monday morning, dreading the return to their routine, a very small group of individuals is wide awake. They are not fueled by coffee or stress, but by a cold, calculated curiosity. These are the people studying market cycles, analyzing historical patterns of power, and watching the quiet movement of physical assets. I still remember a Sunday night many years ago when I realized a fundamental truth that changed my life. The biggest opportunities in history are always born in total silence. Long before the headlines start screaming for attention, the patient win, the prepared rise, and the distracted are left to watch from the sidelines. Right now, we are entering one of those rare moments in human history. We are seeing the birth of new alliances, the fracturing of old supply chains, and a fundamental restructuring of what the world considers valuable. Specifically, look at the East. Look at the massive coordinated efforts of Russia and China. For decades, the global financial system has relied on a specific set of rules. But those rules are being rewritten in real time. While the West focuses on digital abstractions and paper debt, the East is returning to the most fundamental form of wealth, hard assets, and specifically the silver market. Whenever the world restructures its power dynamics, wealth restructures with it. It does not disappear. It simply changes hands. The question is not what is happening out there in the world of geopolitics. The real question is who you decide to become in response to it. Think about those who quietly positioned themselves before every major monetary shift in the past. When currencies were realigned in 1971, or when resources were revalued during the high inflation of the late 1970s, the winners did not panic. They did not complain about the system. They prepared, they studied, they built their patience like a muscle. Tonight, we are going to look past the surface noise. We are going to analyze why the quiet accumulation of silver by global powers is a signal you cannot afford to ignore. We are talking about a move that could shock the financial world and redefine the meaning of a safe haven. This is not about hype or temporary trends. This is about understanding the connection between power, trade, and metal. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you must learn to move with intention while everyone else is waiting for permission from the news. Your future wealth and legacy depend on the choices you make before the change becomes obvious to the masses. Welcome to the Silent Sunday that changes everything. To understand the future of wealth, one must look at the actions of central banks, specifically those of the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. For the past 2 decades, these two nations have been executing a masterpiece of financial strategy that most Western analysts have dismissed as a minor hedge. However, the numbers tell a much more aggressive story. Since the year 2008, the world has seen a relentless accumulation of hard assets in the East. Let us look at the data. China has officially increased its gold reserves for 18 consecutive months as of mid-2024. But experts know that the official numbers are only the tip of the iceberg. Through various state-owned enterprises and private channels, the actual amount of precious metals flowing into Shanghai and Beijing is estimated to be significantly higher than reported. Why is this happening? Because China understands that in a world of infinite paper money, the person holding the physical resource dictates the terms of trade. They are moving away from United States Treasury bonds and moving toward gold and silver at a pace we have not seen since the end of the Second World War. Russia is following a similar, more urgent path. After being cut off from the global dollar payment system in 2022, the Russian central bank stopped prioritizing paper reserves altogether. They have shifted their entire focus to what they call friendly currencies and physical bullion. In 2024, Russia announced its intent to include silver, platinum, and palladium in its state reserves for the first time in recent history. This is a monumental shift. By adding silver to their official state fund, known as the State Fund of Russia, they are signaling to the world that silver is no longer just an industrial byproduct. It is a strategic monetary asset. The coordination between these two powers through the group known as BRICS is the ultimate signal. We are witnessing the construction of a new financial architecture, one that intends to bypass the dollar entirely. This system is being built on a foundation of commodities. Russia is the world's sixth largest producer of silver, and China is the third largest. Together, along with other allied nations, they control a massive portion of the global supply. When they decide to revalue these metals against a failing paper currency, the shockwave will be felt in every bank account on the planet. Most people are distracted by daily politics, but the real war is being fought in the vaults of central banks. The East is preparing for a world where trust in paper is gone. They are positioning themselves long before the crowd realizes that the old rules no longer apply. This is not a conspiracy. It is a mathematical inevitability based on the cycles of debt and power. If you are not watching the flow of physical silver from west to east, you are missing the most important financial story of our lifetime. The chess pieces are already in place. The only question is when the final move will be made. While the average person thinks of silver as a secondary investment or a cheaper version of gold, the world's superpowers see it as a critical industrial weapon. Unlike gold, which is mostly stored in vaults as a store of value, silver is being consumed at an unprecedented rate. It is the most electrically and thermally conductive metal in existence. This unique physical property makes it irreplaceable in the modern world. Without silver, the green energy revolution and the digital age would come to a complete halt. Let us look at the numbers. The Silver Institute reported a global silver deficit of more than 180 million ounces in 2023. This was not a one-time event. We have seen significant supply shortfalls for 3 consecutive years. Where is this silver going? A massive portion is being funneled into the solar energy sector. Each solar panel contains about 20 grams of silver. As China leads the world in solar installations, adding more than 200 gigawatts of capacity in 2023 alone, their demand for silver is skyrocketing. They are not just buying silver to store it, they are buying it to dominate the future of global energy. Furthermore, silver is a core component in the electric vehicle industry and the rollout of 5G technology. An electric vehicle uses nearly double the amount of silver found in a traditional internal combustion engine. From battery management systems to navigation and safety sensors, silver is the invisible thread that connects all modern technology. As the world pushes toward automation and artificial intelligence, the need for high-quality silver components will only grow. China and Russia are fully aware of this. By securing the physical supply now, they are effectively holding the keys to the next industrial era. The strategic nature of silver becomes even more clear when you examine the depletion of global mine reserves. Most of the world's easily accessible silver has already been extracted. Unlike gold, which is recycled at very high rates, much of the silver used in industrial applications is lost in such small quantities that it is not economically viable to recover. We are literally burning through a finite, critical resource while the price is kept artificially low by paper markets. Russia's decision to classify silver as a strategic reserve asset is a direct response to this reality. They understand that when the industrial demand eventually collides with a shrinking supply, the price will not just move, it will explode. The East is playing a game of resource nationalism. They are ensuring that their industries have what they need while the West continues to rely on complex, fragile supply chains and paper contracts that may never be fulfilled with physical metal. This is the hidden side of the silver shockwave. It is a battle for the raw materials that will define the 21st century. History is not a straight line, it is a series of repeating cycles. For the serious investor, these cycles are the closest thing to a crystal ball. When we look at the history of silver, we see a pattern of long periods of boredom followed by explosive, vertical price movements that catch the world by surprise. To understand where we are going, we must first look back at the 3 most significant moments in the modern history of this metal. The first major shift occurred on August 15, 1971. This was the day President Richard Nixon suspended the convertibility of the United States dollar into gold, effectively ending the Bretton Woods system. This event untethered all global currencies from a hard asset and gave birth to the era of pure fiat money. In the decade that followed, the world experienced massive inflation and a loss of confidence in paper wealth. Silver, which started the decade at around $1.50 per ounce, skyrocketed to a staggering $50 per ounce by January 1980. That is a gain of over 3,000% in just 10 years. This was not just about two billionaire brothers trying to corner the market. It was a systemic flight to safety by millions of people who realized their paper money was losing value every single day. The second cycle to study is the late 1990s. Most people remember this as the era of the dot-com bubble, but in the background, one of the world's greatest value investors, Warren Buffett, was making a massive bet. In 1997, Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, quietly purchased 111 million ounces of silver. At the time, silver was trading at less than $5 per ounce, a price that Buffett concluded was too low to sustain global supply and demand. He held that position until 2006, proving that the smartest money in the world moves when an asset is hated and ignored, not when it is popular. The third and most recent cycle occurred during the global financial crisis of 2008. As central banks began printing trillions of dollars to bail out the banking system, silver once again reacted to the debasement of currency. It rose from under $10 in late 2008 to nearly $50 again by April 2011. What do these cycles tell us? They tell us that whenever the world enters a period of high debt, geopolitical tension, or monetary instability, silver acts as a pressure release valve. We are currently seeing the same ingredients that led to the 1971 and 2008 spikes: record-breaking global debt, a move away from the dollar by nations like Russia and China, and a fundamental shortage of physical metal. History shows that the shift from paper back to real assets is always sudden and violent. The early observers are the ones who capture the majority of the gains. By the time the general public realizes that a new cycle has begun, the opportunity to position yourself at low prices has already passed. Most people treat Sunday night as the emotional end of their freedom. It is a slow countdown toward Monday morning, filled with anxiety, procrastination, and the temporary escape of digital distractions. They scroll through social media or watch mindless entertainment to forget that another week of the rat race is about to begin. But for the elite class of investors and thinkers, there is another way to experience this moment, and it changes everything. Sunday night is not the end of the week. It is the beginning of your advantage. While the world is asleep or complaining, a very small group of people are preparing to dominate the days ahead. I once met a legendary fund manager who built his entire career around one simple ritual: the Sunday night deep dive. Every week, without fail, he would sit alone in his study with a notebook and a stack of raw data. He would review the geopolitical shifts of the past 7 days, analyze the movement of physical commodities in Shanghai, and adjust his strategy for the coming week. There was no noise, no phone, and no interruptions. Over time, that quiet ritual separated him from everyone else in the industry. While his competitors were reacting to headlines on Monday morning with panic or excitement, he was already calm. He had already processed the information. He entered the market with clarity, while others entered with confusion. This is where the real money is made. Success is not built in big, dramatic moments that everyone sees. It is built in these invisible hours when discipline either shows up or it does not. The habits you practice when no one is watching decide the outcomes that everyone eventually envies. When you treat Sunday night as a sacred time for learning and sharpening your mind, you begin each week already ahead of 99% of the population. This applies directly to the silver market and global finance. The investors who consistently outperform the market are not chasing hype on a Tuesday afternoon. They have already studied the supply deficits and the central bank movements over the weekend. They have looked at the numbers from the Russian Ministry of Finance and the Chinese silver imports while the rest of the world was distracted. That clarity compounds week after week, year after year. It becomes momentum. If you dedicate even one focused hour every Sunday night to reading long-term reports, refining your goals, and strengthening your financial mindset, you build a silent advantage that most people will never touch. You start walking into the world not with dread, but with direction. Your future self is shaped in these quiet moments. The difference between feeling behind in life and feeling in total control is often just this one habit. When you claim your Sunday nights, you stop drifting and start designing your life with intention. You begin treating your time as the most valuable asset you own. Over the years, I have watched ordinary people transform their net worth simply by changing how they handle the last 4 hours of their weekend. They stop wasting them and start investing them. The winners are not born different. They simply choose different routines, and Sunday night is where that choice begins. Most people spend their lives searching for secret information, insider tips, or hidden formulas for wealth. They believe that somewhere out there, a special piece of knowledge exists that, once discovered, will instantly make them rich. But the truth is far less glamorous and far more powerful. Real discipline is the ultimate insider information. It is the one advantage available to anyone willing to practice it, and yet, it is the one advantage that most people refuse to develop. In the world of professional trading and resource investing, I have seen brilliant minds fail because they lacked emotional control. I once knew a trader who never followed trends and never relied on luck. His daily routine looked incredibly boring from the outside. He woke up at the same time every morning, studied the same reports on industrial silver demand, and tracked the same bullion flow numbers. Year after year, his performance remained steady, while others experienced wild swings of success and failure. When asked for his secret, he simply said that he trusted his process more than his emotions. Discipline builds a unique kind of trust with yourself. When you decide to build a position in a metal like silver because the fundamentals are sound, and you stick to that plan even when the price drops temporarily, you are exercising power. Most investors buy when they feel excited and sell when they feel afraid. They are controlled by the market. A disciplined investor, however, controls their response to the market. This is exactly how smart money operates. They understand that the market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. This principle applies perfectly to our current global situation. When nations like Russia and China make strategic moves into hard assets, they are not looking at the price chart for the next 10 minutes. They are operating on a timeline of 10 years. They have the discipline to accumulate slowly and quietly while the West is distracted by short-term debt cycles. If you want to invest like the elite, you must adopt their temperament. You must learn to value the boring, consistent actions over the exciting, impulsive ones. Discipline also protects you from your own worst impulses. It prevents you from chasing a price spike when it is too late, and it keeps you from selling in a panic when the headlines are designed to scare you. It allows you to operate with clarity when the rest of the world feels chaotic. Over time, this creates a calm confidence that cannot be shaken by opinions or temporary setbacks. The most successful people in the world are not necessarily the most talented, they are the most consistent. They show up when they are tired, they continue when progress feels slow, they remain patient when others quit. This quiet persistence is what builds extraordinary outcomes. When you commit to discipline, you stop waiting for circumstances to change and you start changing yourself. You build power from the inside out. And once that power is built, no market crash or economic storm can take it away from you. The real advantage is not what you know. It is what you do every single day, regardless of how you feel. Most people wait for movement before they make a decision. They look around to see where the crowd is going, seeking safety in numbers. They wait for confirmation from the mainstream media, approval from their peers, and a sense of absolute security. But in the world of high-stakes finance, by the time the crowd moves, the advantage is already gone. The real winners understand a different rule of life. You must position yourself where the world is going, not where it is right now. This is how every great fortune is built. Years ago, I watched a small group of sophisticated investors quietly study a struggling industry that everyone else had written off. The headlines were overwhelmingly negative, the sentiment was at an all-time low, and fear was everywhere. Most people stayed away, but those few saw something others missed. They saw the early signs of change in government policy, a tightening of supply, and a long-term surge in demand. They positioned themselves while the environment still felt uncomfortable and lonely. When the industry finally recovered, they were already established, while everyone else was just waking up to the opportunity. By then, the early movers were already looking for their next exit. Positioning is not about predicting the future with a magic ball. It is about preparation combined with the courage to act on logic rather than emotion. You do not need absolute certainty to move forward. You need clarity in your thinking and confidence in your discipline. The crowd waits for perfect conditions. Builders create their own conditions. They understand that opportunity never arrives when everything feels safe and predictable. It arrives when the environment is uncertain and the future is unclear to the masses. This principle applies directly to your finances, your business, and your career. When you begin learning a new skill before it becomes a requirement, You are positioning yourself. When you invest in an undervalued asset like silver while others are distracted by speculative bubbles, you are positioning yourself. I have seen people completely transform their lives simply by acting earlier than everyone else around them. They saved when others spent. They learned when others relaxed. They built their positions when others waited for a sign. Over time, the gap between these individuals and the crowd becomes enormous. This is not because they were born with more talent, but because they had the emotional strength to tolerate discomfort. Positioning requires you to be okay with being wrong for a while before you are right. It requires you to trust your long-term vision even when no one else understands it. But that discomfort is temporary, while the results are permanent. The crowd will always arrive later. They always do. They show up when the risk appears to be gone and the reward has already been harvested. They call it safe, but the builders call it too late. If you want a different future, you must be willing to stand apart before the difference becomes obvious. The decisions you make before the movement begins are the only ones that define the life you live after it. The greatest advantage you can ever develop in life and investing is not intelligence, money, or high-level connections. It is a calm mind. A calm mind allows you to control chaotic markets, chaotic situations, and chaotic emotions. When others panic, rush, and react to the latest breaking news, the calm thinker observes, calculates, and acts with precision. This emotional stability is what separates those who build lasting wealth from those who repeatedly lose it to the volatility of the world. I once watched a market crash wipe out years of progress for people who were extremely smart but emotionally unstable. They had the information, they had the resources, and they had the best tools. But when fear entered the room and the screens turned red, their strategy disappeared. They sold at the bottom because they could not handle the internal pressure of uncertainty. At the same time, a quiet group of disciplined investors stepped in. They acquired valuable positions in physical assets at prices most people were too afraid to touch. Their secret was not superior knowledge, it was superior emotional control. Calmness allows you to see clearly when everything around you is blurred by noise. It creates a critical space between a stimulus, like a price drop or a geopolitical conflict, and your response. In that small space lies your entire power as a human being. When the silver market moves violently, or when Russia and China announce a new gold-backed trade currency, your ability to remain steady becomes your greatest financial asset. Panic turns small problems into disasters. Calm transforms those same problems into life-changing opportunities. This principle reaches far beyond finance. In negotiations, leadership, and personal growth, the person who stays calm always holds the upper hand. They listen more carefully. They think more deeply. They move more deliberately. While others exhaust themselves emotionally by reacting to every headline, the calm individual conserves their energy and deploys it strategically when the timing is perfect. Training your mind to remain calm is not a natural state in a world designed to trigger fear, urgency, and constant distraction. It requires daily practice. It requires discipline in what you consume, how you speak to yourself, and how you structure your environment. Simple habits like deep thinking, journaling, and disconnecting from the 24-hour news cycle strengthen your nervous system. Over time, this calm becomes your signature. People trust you more. Opportunities find you more easily. You make fewer mistakes and you recover much faster when you do. Your confidence no longer depends on market conditions because it is built on self-control. The most powerful individuals in history were not the loudest or the most aggressive. They were the most composed. Their presence created stability in unstable times. If you master your mind, you master your future. No economic storm can overpower someone who knows how to remain calm and move forward with steady conviction. Many people believe that extraordinary lives belong only to extraordinary people, as if success is reserved for those born with rare talent or secret connections. But the truth is far more encouraging. Ordinary people become extraordinary through the application of extreme patience. Not overnight success, not sudden miracles, but quiet, consistent patience applied over long periods of time. This is the law of compounding, and it is the most powerful force in the financial universe. I once met a woman who worked a simple job and earned an average income. There was nothing about her life that looked remarkable from the outside, But every month, without fail, she saved a portion of her earnings and invested in physical assets and her own education. While others searched for shortcuts or chased the latest tech bubbles, she trusted the process. Years later, her financial independence allowed her to leave her job and build a business that supported her entire family. Her starting point did not predict her destination. Her patience did. Patience is not a passive act. It is an active discipline. It is the decision to keep going when progress feels slow, when results are invisible, and when doubt begins to creep in. Most people quit in this phase. They change plans, they chase new ideas, and they abandon what they started just before the breakthrough happens. The patient ones remain. And because they remain, they eventually rise. Every great investor in the silver market understands this. They do not panic at temporary losses, and they do not celebrate temporary gains. They stay focused on the long-term supply and demand cycles. They allow compound interest and compound habits to do the heavy lifting. What looks like slow progress at first becomes unstoppable momentum later. This applies to every area of your life. Improving your health, your mindset, your career, or your business requires the same long-term perspective. You do not become strong in a week. You do not master a complex market in a month. You do not build a legacy in a year. But every small improvement accumulates. Patience protects you from self-sabotage. It keeps you from making emotional decisions when the world is in a frenzy. It gives you the courage to continue when the path feels lonely. The world celebrates fast results, but nearly every meaningful achievement is built on years of unseen effort. If you can learn to trust the process of accumulation, you unlock a level of power that very few people ever experience. You do not need to be special to create a special life. You need to be consistent. You need to be disciplined. Most importantly, you need to be patient. If you are willing to outlast your doubts, your fears, and your excuses, the wealth and freedom you desire will eventually have no choice but to meet you there. The silver shockwave will reward those who had the patience to position themselves years before the first spark was lit. The future of your wealth is decided long before the headlines appear on your screen. It is decided in the daily choices you make when no one is watching, in the habits you build when the world is distracted, and in the discipline you practice before results become visible. As we have analyzed tonight, the global financial landscape is undergoing a tectonic shift. The move by Russia and China to accumulate physical silver and restructure the global trade system is not a minor event. It is a final warning for those who are paying attention. The danger is not that change will come. The danger is that you will wait for the change to become obvious before you begin preparing. By the time the mainstream media confirms that the dollar has lost its dominance or that silver has entered a permanent supply deficit, the window of opportunity will have already closed. The future does not reward those who hope for the best. It rewards those who take calculated action while the world is still quiet. Your action plan starting tonight is simple but demanding. First, stop consuming noise and start studying patterns. Look at the flow of physical commodities and the debt levels of nations. Second, claim your Sunday nights. Use this time to review your finances, sharpen your skills, and plan your moves with precision. Third, build a position in hard assets. Do not chase the hype of digital bubbles. Look at what the world's superpowers are actually buying. Whether it is silver, gold, or your own productive skills, invest in what has intrinsic value. Your habits are voting for the kind of life you will live 5, 10, and 20 years from now. Every choice to educate yourself instead of seeking entertainment strengthens one version of your future and weakens another. Those votes are being counted every single day, long before the world announces the final outcome. If you want to control where your life goes, you must start building that future today, before the headlines tell you it is too late. The world is changing whether you are ready or not. The silver shockwave is just one part of a larger story of a world returning to reality and hard assets. Your freedom, your legacy, and your security depend on the courage you show tonight. Do not be the one who reacts when the storm hits. Be the one who built the ship while the sun was still shining. The quiet preparation of today is the foundation for the extraordinary victory of tomorrow. Take action, stay disciplined, and stay calm. The future belongs to the prepared. The